Milwaukee's Fire and Police Commission is set to make a decision regarding a total ban of the police use of chokeholds.
This has been a topic up for discussion since March, but the vote on the issue has been pushed back several times. It allowed more time for public comment and community meetings.
Our Ryan Jenkins goes 360 ahead of tonight's planned vote to gain a deeper understanding of each side of this debate.
You might remember back in December, Milwaukee's Fire and Police Commission passed a new use of force policy that bans the use of chokeholds except for in life or death situations. But now some want a complete chokehold ban without exceptions, and the FPC is set to vote on that tonight. To gain a deeper understanding of the ongoing debate surrounding that vote, we're going 360, speaking to activists leading efforts to get the community on board with a total ban. A National Police Association who says the community should have the final say, but warns of the potential dangers of a total ban. And we speak to a member of the Milwaukee Police Association, pushing back, saying the decision could come with some serious consequences for police. That's where we'll start.
A chokehold would not be one of those options that you would use simply because you feared for your safety. It would literally have to be a life or death situation where
Danilo Cardenas has been part of the Milwaukee police force for more than 20 years. He points out that chokeholds are not a technique used by officers in Milwaukee to restrain people. He supports the partial ban and calls chokeholds mainly unacceptable, but says taking away an officer's ability to use a chokehold in a life or death situation is irresponsible.
this is not something that we take lightly by any means. And the use of chokeholds would prevent the loss of life of an officer and maybe even potentially of the subject, because we know that using a chokehold would probably be less lethal than if I was able to overcome the resistance by having to use my firearm. And I'd like people to just consider that.
Cardenas says state law would still allow for an officer to use a chokehold in self-defense, but if the FPC votes for a complete ban, Milwaukee police officers could face disciplinary action and could even be fired for trying to save their own lives.
It's clearly a tactic that is unacceptable. When law enforcement says you're limiting the tools in their toolbox to be utilized, I think they have an abundance of tools already at their availability, where a chokehold isn't one that's required or necessary.
On the other side of the debate, Fred Royal, first vice president of the Milwaukee branch of the NAACP, says banning chokeholds sends two messages.
You send in a clear message to law enforcement officers that there are some things that they're prohibited from doing. Law enforcement agencies are listening to our concerns and are taking police accountability and reform seriously.
He says the vote for a total ban would also close potential loopholes if an officer abuses their power and uses a chokehold. Activist Mariah Smith with the People's Revolution agrees.
Chokeholds need to be banned with no exception because officers have a plethora of excuses when it comes to somebody that looks like me.
She still leads protests for Joel Acevedo, killed last year at the hands of an off-duty Milwaukee police officer. According to investigators, now former officer Michael Mattioli held Acevedo in a chokehold during an argument. Acevedo died from his injuries a week later.
And the FPC needs to know that their decisions that they make, they directly affect me. They directly affect her. They directly affect my little brother, who is a big boy, but would not hurt a fly. They directly affect the Black and brown community severely.
The final perspective comes from Tony Chapa, the executive director of the Hispanic American Police Command Officers Association, who also says community gives law enforcement their authority.
Policing is a community project.
He believes the community should have the last word in this decision, and in Milwaukee, a majority of the public comment being considered by the FPC has so far been in favor of a total ban. But Chapa also said that nationally, 84 police officers were killed in the line of duty between the first of the year and April 29th in 2020. During the same time period this year, 62 police officers have been killed. The job is dangerous, and Chapa says taking away the exception to a chokehold ban could put more lives at danger.
We want to make sure that we're not disarming or making the police department less efficient not just to protect themselves, but protect the people who are calling on them for help. But we recognize that the community is the last word.
3 of the 6 commissioners who are set to vote have said they are in support of a total ban. The vote has been delayed 3 times over the past 2 months, and now it's clear that the pressure is on for a decision to be made. Ryan Jenkins, TMJ4 News.
And so digging deeper now for a look at other factors the commissioners may consider ahead of the vote.
A state subcommittee made up of law enforcement and members of the community recently made a recommendation to Speaker Robin Vos to have lawmakers vote to prohibit law enforcement agencies' use of force policy from authorizing chokeholds by officers, except for when an officer is in a life-threatening situation.
Meanwhile, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act of 2021, if passed by Congress, could incentivize police departments for banning chokeholds altogether without exception, opening up a door for federal dollars to help fund police departments.